So I sat down last week with Devashi Shakti, who is one of the pioneers in the feminine embodiment space. And we sat down and she interviewed me for her podcast series, Beyond Patriarchal Sex. If you haven't tuned into the podcast, I highly recommend you do. She is hosting a collective inquiry on the relational dynamics as they are currently unfolding between men and women, or between the masculine and feminine. And she's invited several thought leaders, relationship coaches, healers, into this collective inquiry to add their professional and personal experience and expertise to the conversation. So in case you haven't noticed, we're kind of going through a bit of a collective awakening around masculine, feminine relating. And what I wanted to focus on in this conversation is firstly talking about my personal experience with my clients, who are primarily people seeking their divine union, a spiritual union that serves God through the union, and that is aligned with their mission on this planet and their dharma and what they're here to do, to serve the collective awakening that humanity is going through. And there's a lot of things that I've seen with these particular clients there, which are, it's obviously a subset of the population and not necessarily representative of what's going on collectively. But obviously it shows up a lot of themes that can be seen collectively as well, because even people who are at the forefront of kind of seeking the divine union, that is, I believe, our true organic codex as human beings, we can still be subjected to societal programming around relationships, around sex, that affect how we show up in relationships. And this obviously causes a lot of issues like relational misery and sexual misery. So I talked about some of the things that I have seen working in the quantum field as an oracle, as somebody who's trained in quantum field work, which is basically where I look into somebody's light body and I can see the blocks that they're holding on to in their auric field, in their chakras and things like that, and clear them. So what I've seen collectively with men, what I've seen collectively with women, and what I've seen collectively with people regardless of what gender they are, that can cause them to oftentimes repeatedly get into relationships in which they're not being honored, in which they're not being met equally, in which the person is actually wasting their time, that don't serve their highest timeline in seeking that divine union, that spiritual union, that relationship that serves God and what they're here to do. This is obviously a really important conversation, because it doesn't just affect our relationships, okay? That it obviously affects our relationships on a micro level, but on a macro level, we're seeing it play out on the world stage with everything that's happening, this kind of great revealing that we're going through, where it feels like society is collapsing at the moment, because we are seeing this polarity imbalance manifested on a macro level, okay? So the dominance of patriarchal systems, or what I like to refer to as the reptilian masculine, because it keeps us in a left brain dominant, survivalistic, capitalistic, masculine paradigm that keeps us in the R complex of our brain, the survival brain, like the reptilian brain, rather than activating those more feminine qualities of the right brain hemisphere, which are, intuition, care, compassion, creativity, and all of those more feminine qualities. And we're seeing it play out, okay? Bell Hooks likes to refer to it as the capitalistic white supremacist patriarchy. I hope I got that right. And that's another way of describing it. And obviously we're seeing it play out on the world stage with all these genocides, late stage capitalism, overtaking of AI, hustle culture, destruction of the planet, and now this uprising that's happening and repeated calls that we return to matriarchal ways of being, which center children, center family, center the earth, center community, and don't just center the individual at the expense of, civilization. So it is a really, really important conversation because this stuff isn't just relational, it's civilizational. So if this is interesting to you and you want to be first to hear when it goes live, comment. If you're watching this on Instagram, comment links and I will send you a link to my podcast and her podcast where you can already tune into the conversations that are already happening around this subject. And then if you turn on notifications, you'll be first to hear when it goes live. If you're watching this on YouTube, then you're already on my podcast. But I will post a link to her podcast in the description where you can see the conversations that have already happened.